afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So it's an honor for me, Professor Stella, to have you here.
Likewise.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jensen. Oh, I was waiting for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jensen.
Stella,
Hey,
thank you.
Jensen.
So you can have a seat.
All right.
So now our session, I think this is the last session with you, right, for today. So it's going to be 1 hour. I hope you're okay with that. The title is Bridging Man and Machine, about AI sovereignty, human connection, and also future talents. So I have several questions here, if you don't mind. So first of all, to Professor Stella, you said that I have to call you Stella. It's kind of weird.
Of course, just call me Stella.
So it's
Professor
okay.
Stella. I call her Professor.
Is that Jensen or is that AI?
Professor Christie.
Okay, but then I will call you Professor Stella, is okay?
Yes.
Okay, Professor Stella. So your core research is about cognitive research, right? It's about how human think, how human learn, how humans solve problems. So can you explain to us about this cognitive research related with the AI development?
Sure. I first want to say what a great honor to be here with two amazing people, with Jensen and with Professor Ayu. And with all of you, it's such a great honor. Thank you for having me here. I think, Jensen, you've met some of these people, but I am told that we have thousands and thousands of young people watching us right now. So hi, everyone online. It's what a wonderful thing to be here. So about cognitive research, I think, Jensen talked about intelligence, right? We've heard about we need to own our intelligence, and that is exactly what cognitive scientists do. So my own research is try to understand what really is intelligence, like what is the origins of intelligence and what is the mechanism that bring us to intelligence. And one thing that's very interesting that I want to share with all of you is that intelligence is not as you think that, the really amazing AI only, or if you think about the most intelligent person like Einstein. Intelligence is everywhere. The fact that you know how to sit. Do you know how difficult it is to sit? Because you have to calculate every single movement of your body and calculate the pressure, the momentum, everything in order for you to be able to sit well. That's intelligence. And so behind all those, we try to understand what is the algorithm that gives rise to those seemingly simple but very intelligent movement. So there are two things that are very interesting if you look at now the human side, so to speak. The first one is that we now know that humans, unlike AI, actually can thrive from very small amount of data. So with just a small amount of data, 6 months old can already distinguish between cats and dogs. And they would never make mistakes. And there are actual studies that 6 months old can tell apart cats and dogs. And you know that even now with the amazing AI, image recognition is not 100% correct with cats and dogs. And if you think about 6 months old, how many cats and dogs have they seen? How many? Take a guess. I mean, certainly it's not billions. It's probably not even in the hundreds of thousands, right? But with just maybe thousands of images of cats and dogs, you are able, a 6 months old are able to distinguish and abstract what is a cat and what is a dog. And we still don't know what is that representation. So that's the first one. Humans can actually learn from a very small amount of data. The second one, humans, like AI, employ statistical learning. So AI, LLM is trained on a huge amount of data and try to make sense from that amount of data using statistics. Humans use statistics as well. So if you think about it, a 3-year-old were never told how to actually, what is exactly the grammar of their language. In Indonesian, we say buku merah. So the noun first, then the adjective afterwards. But in English, it's the other way around. Red book, the adjective before the noun. And 3-year-olds growing up in Indonesia and 3-year-olds growing up in 3-year-olds going out in the US are never told about first put the noun or first put the adjective. But can they do that? And that's using statistical modeling. So the statistics are there. But one thing that's really interesting is that a lot of the deep insights don't come from statistical thinking. Instead, a lot of the deep insights actually come from analogical thinking, from seeing relations and similarities of patterns between events and between domains. So one of the best example is Niels Bohr. So many of you probably know that Niels Bohr won the Nobel Prize for discovering the structure of atoms. Do you know how he discovered those? He didn't discover that from getting so many data. Instead, well, that too probably, but instead, the insight, the key moment of insight is that he looked at the structure of the solar system. And he asked himself, maybe even though the sun and the atom are very different things, but maybe the structure is the same structure. And that's what brought his insight. And that's what I call analogical thinking. So these two, being able to use a small amount of data and having insights from seeing patterns, seeing similarities, analogical thinking, is what we have understood now by a really great algorithms that humans can employ in order to produce great thinking. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. So my question is, what do you think is the critical area of research that universities in Indonesia should undertake that will bring societal goods and matter most for, because Indonesia is a developing country, right? So we have many limitations. So what do you think is the critical research area in the era of AI?
The critical area of research.
Yep. Yes.
You should dedicate your life to work on things that are hard to do, that have never been done before. That if you succeed, it could make an impact, hopefully on as many people as possible. And it should be something that gives you great joy, because if it's hard to do, you will probably fail in the beginning, suffer a great deal, enjoy much setback, and unless you find great joy in it, you will give up. And so I think you need to find these three things. Now the question is, here in Indonesia, what would fall into that intersection? And I think you could safely say no one cares about Indonesia more than the people of Indonesia. And so you have to take it upon yourself to apply this technology, to advance this technology for the benefit of your people in a way that serves your society, serves your culture. Because you can't assume that somebody else has your interest. And because you're such a large population, and it's such a large, diverse population, you have the natural resources. You have the data. You have the natural resources because you have national will. You have the natural resources because you also have demonstrated possibility. Sahabat is demonstration that it is possible for Indonesia to develop your own AI. The art of the possible, when you see something that's possible, when you see somebody do something, it inspires you. If they can do it, why can't you? Okay. And I think that now you have this open source Indonesian large language model. It encodes the operating system of artificial intelligence. You now have the operating system of artificial intelligence. From that, you could do many things. Of course, there's a lot of many things that needs to be done here. For example, one good question is, of course, agriculture is a very important industry. Yeah. And so how do you apply this AI for agriculture? Of course, you have your own culture and your definition of your core values, your definition of social norm, which means that you have to create the necessary guardrails, the necessary reinforcement learning so that you can fine-tune these models for the social norms of Indonesia. And so there's a great deal of work to do, whether it's the specific nature of your industry, the specific nature of your culture, but you are now able to do it. You know, you have the freedom to do it. You have the capability to do it. And so long as you have the willpower to do it, this is going to be an extraordinary time.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, let's get close. Actually, Jensen, I do research about AI since about 25 years ago in the Indonesian natural language processing. And I just got this Sahabat AI just today, right? So it took about 25 years for Indonesia to have this LLM for Indonesia. So it's not easy to conduct research in Indonesia. Because I already here, I do research, I teach, I even try to make a startup. There are so many problems in Indonesia. So perhaps I would like to ask both of your opinion about the ecosystem of AI in Indonesia. Because I think if you want to have this AI research developed in Indonesia, then we have to have this good ecosystem in Indonesia.
So if we ask ourselves about ecosystem, I think it's going to be the same whether it's for AI or any other endeavor. I want to pick up on Jensen's amazing point that you should do the things that you don't know. What is that thing? You should research things that have never been done before. That really is critical. That is what the research is. You're asking a question, and you're trying to get an answer to that question. Okay. So if we think about what is that ecosystem that allows us to do that, there are a number of things. And the first thing is that from the doers of the ecosystem, the one who's asking the question, you really have to ask the questions. And in cognitive science, the fancy word of this is that you gotta have to have active learning mindset. So active learning seems a fancy word, but it truly is something that's real. And active learning means that the learner needs to always ask the thing that I get. You know, in cognitive science, we always think about information processing. There's so many informations in the world. Right now, you're listening to what I say. You may be paying attention to gesture of Jensen or the mimicry of Professor Ayu. All these are information. And when that information comes in, if you're an active learner rather than a passive learner, you want to be asking, why? Why is that information there? Do I want to take up that information? How is that information is actually connected to the information that I got yesterday or the information that I might get tomorrow? So this is what active learning is. So when you read, you don't just read. You ask like, why is the writer wrote what he wrote there? Okay, why am I given this exam question by my faculty? So the doer of these, you know, in the ecosystem of research must be an active learning.
Machine learning is active learning.
Yeah.
Stochastic gradient descent
gradients is
requires
absolutely.
first a guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
before it could be
Before it
corrected.
could, before it gave anything.
Reinforcement learning is active learning.
Yeah.
Before, right, before you can improve, you have to do something.
That's right. That's
Even
right.
if it's random.
Even if it's random. And you need to come up with predictability, right? You need to come up with
right.
predictions. And so that's what we have to do too.
By the way, that is a very big part of innovation.
Yeah.
A very big part of success is first doing.
Yeah.
Bias to action is very important part of success. Sometimes, as machine learning will tell you, even a random first guess is better than not guessing at all.
Yeah.
And so active learning is really important.
Yeah. And you know, we have this ability of active learning ever since we were very, very young. If you ever if you remember or ever pay attention to children playing, do you know, no one ever told playing, do you know what playing is? Playing is problem solving all the time. There's only one swing, and there are 5 people who want to play in that swing. You got to solve the problem. Okay, I go first, only for 1 minute, even though sometimes you don't know what 1 minute is when you're young.
No, I'll
okay?
sit, you push.
Okay, you push. All right, I say you push. These are all problems, and
we could all play together. I'll sit, you push.
That's right. Whether you agree or not to do that, right? So you have to actively solve the problems, and you have to decide yourself what is the problem you want to solve, and how do you want to solve it with a cooperation. So play, it turns out, is a very, very important mechanism. So in the ecosystem, when you do active learning, it's like you want to play, and don't lose it when you're adults. You need to keep that playing, like actively, like I want to do something, I want to find out the solution. So that's really important.
To build an ecosystem, the first thing that has to happen is the ecosystem must believe it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
In order to build an ecosystem, you need a starting point. Today, you have a starting point.
Yeah.
For the very first time, there is an artificial intelligence starting point in Indonesia. You have infrastructure, you have a large language model, everything can be possible now.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. And
this model that was announced today, open source today, took the computer industry and my entire 40 years. It is now available in Indonesia. What is available here has not been available until just recently, within just the last few years. And now Indonesia has it. You have the foundation, you have the operating system of artificial intelligence now. Now, the ecosystem will move very quickly.
yeah.
All kinds of interesting companies and new software will be created as a result. I have every confidence that a year from now, when I come back, this ecosystem will be completely different. The number of startups, the amount of research, the number of students that have engaged it will blossom. I am certain of it. It starts with, yep. Today is day 0. Indonesia AI.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for Indosat, GoTo, NVIDIA also, of course, Accenture to make it happen. The Sahabat.ai, LLM. I agree with you. This is one of the example of a collaboration between the industry experts with the academia also. So actually, we already have this collaboration terms so many years. So do you have any suggestion how to push it? Is it like, okay, today we already have this Sahabat AI LLM, so it will be like the example of an excellent collaboration? Or is there anything else that we need to do, or perhaps to take into account what kind of key principles to push the collaboration so we can do leapfrog in the AI development, not only using AI?
Machine learning starts with having a machine.
Okay.
I said something very obvious, but for many people, they still miss it. You cannot be an astrophysicist today if you don't have some kind of telescope or radio telescope or some instrument You can't be an astrophysicist today. You can't be a particle physicist today if you don't have a large hadron collider or some particle accelerator. You can't really be a genomicist today if you don't have a gene sequencing instrument. And so having the instrument is essential. You don't have to have the largest instrument in the world, but you need to have an instrument. And the technology is moving so fast. Yesterday's technology capability could be quite affordable today. You know, back in the old days when we had Moore's Law, technology was improving by 10 times every 5 years. But now, NVIDIA's technology is improving by 10,000 times every 5 years. That's another way of saying that every 5 years, our technology is 10,000 times more cost-effective. And so a few years later, the technology is quite accessible. And so don't be afraid of it. Don't let anything get in the way, surely not the access of infrastructure. And of course, our partnership with IOH, BDX, and so many other partners here, we're going to make the infrastructure quite affordable. That's right, exactly.
That's great.
And so I think one of the most important things is that the universities have to dedicate themselves to make machines, not to own them, but the rental of them, the access of them, available to the researchers. It's also important that the culture of Indonesia has to embrace venture capitalists and startups, to give them an opportunity to succeed, to cultivate young entrepreneurs so that they could take advantage of this new technology. And surely every single large company, the CEOs of every large company should make it a mandate, an imperative to engage artificial intelligence. And so everything from university to startups to large established companies, we have to make sure that every part of Indonesia now engages the fundamental AI technology you now have. Sahabat is here now. There is no excuse. We have Sahabat now. Sahabat, Sahabat.
So the question is about how can we push collaboration. And I totally agree, of course, the machineries has to be here and we have to involve everybody. And I want to share, I think, a schema that might be useful. This comes from cognitive science, from David Marr. And David Marr is one of the foundational researcher in cognitive science. He tries to understand how does perception work. And perception is not the same as seeing, because when you see, it's the light wave comes into your retina. But your brain has to calculate that light wave so that you know that you are looking at Jensen, the beautiful leather jacket that Jensen has, that I covet, or looking at Professor Ayu and the beautiful smile that she has. Your brain has to process it. So how is this anything to do with collaboration? So David Marr says that you always need to think in 3 levels of analysis. The first level of analysis is called the computational level. And that means you ask, what is the computational problem that the system is trying to solve? So what is it that the system is trying to solve? In his case, he was trying to solve how to make sense of the light wave that comes into your retina. The second level is called the algorithmic level. And the algorithmic level asks, what is the algorithm that the system employs to solve that problem? Okay? And the third level is called the implementational level. And that is asking, what is exactly the physical implementation of the algorithm that you use to solve that problem? So these 3 levels of analysis must coexist in order to move anything forward. And these 3 levels of analysis could be done by different players. It could be that the computational level is done by the academia, by the researchers, whereas the implementation level is done by the industry, by like things like sahabat. And the algorithmic level maybe could be dispersed across many different players and try to think what are the different algorithms that you do that. So I just want to give a real example about what this means. Let's just take any random example. How do you guys choose what you wear today? Okay? So if you ask the computational problem...
I know.
Okay, so we can ask Jensen. Jensen, what was the problem that you're trying to solve when you're trying to decide how to wear clothes, how to choose your clothing today?
I had 5 pairs of black pants in my suitcase, 5 shirts, all exactly the same. And so...
so you guys can tell what is the algorithm that Jensen used, right? Just like, you know, 5 chose 1 every day, right? That's the algorithm that he used. Some of you may use different algorithm, right? You might use the algorithm in order to make myself comfortable, in order to make myself look good. That's why you wear black all the time, right? Look slim, okay? So this is the algorithmic level. And then you have to have the computational level to solve, you know, the actual implementation level to actually physically truly do this. That means like owing actual 5 and truly choosing it with your hand and with your eyes, and it's about the color, right? And you can ask this question to anything. I can ask this question again to Jensen. Jensen, what is the...
It's harder to choose from one of the 5
one out of 5 than
pair of pants. Much harder than you think.
So this is very interesting. We ask, what is the problem that NVIDIA as a system is trying to solve?
We are trying to solve for, well, what our company's mission is to build computers to solve problems that normal computers cannot.
See, that's the computational level.
So in a lot of ways, we're looking for problems that are impractical today, impossible today, or the problems aren't even trying to be solved because everybody knows it's impossible.
Yeah.
And so when we discovered quantum chemistry, climate simulation, weather simulation is possible to solve. Climate simulation, very hard to solve. Regional climate simulation, basically impossible today. We need a supercomputer about 1 billion times larger than the largest supercomputer today. Robotics was too difficult to solve. And so in all these different ways, we're looking for problems. And then we ask ourselves, you know, is this something within our lifetime to solve? And if it's within our lifetime to solve, we can make a contribution. And if solving it could make a big impact, then we will take it on. So one of the questions, of course, that you were mentioning earlier. And so digital biology, for the first time, we might be able to use artificial intelligence so that we can emulate the human biology inside a computer for the first time. And if we can emulate the human biology, create a digital twin of either proteins or cells or even an organ, an entire digital human, then we can simulate the effectiveness of drugs more effectively. And hopefully get life-saving drugs out to the market faster and make an impact. And so that would be an example of something that you say to yourself, this is very exciting. And maybe now is the time that we dedicate ourselves to computer-aided drug discovery. It'll still take a decade, but let's get to it today.
Thanks. So that's why we can push the collaboration, right? When you ask those interesting questions, you ask the algorithm, and then you have to implement it. That's what makes NVIDIA, because all have those 3, it's like a really great company that really pushed forward. And so that's the collaboration, and that's the 3 system levels that I'm talking about. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're solving a computational problem here, right? It's exactly. Teamwork. That's the algorithm.
The computation, algorithm, the implementation. Thank you, Professor Stella. So I want to continue the NVIDIA things, because you know NVIDIA is always stay forefront at the innovation. You are number one technology industry in the world, right? So I would like to ask, how does NVIDIA always stay forefront of innovation? And how do us, the university researchers, can copy that, you know? What do you want to tell to us about that?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that. But it doesn't feel like that.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because in almost everything that we do, there is no race. There's nobody else there. And we choose problems that are very hard to do, that has never been done before. And oftentimes when you choose problems that are very hard to do, that have never been done before, there's nobody else doing it. You're completely alone. And the reason you're completely alone is because it is barely possible to do it. People don't like to do things that are barely possible. They like to do things that are possible. And we like to do things, I like to do things that are barely possible. Most likely impossible. The chance of success, I hope, for a very long time is low. And someday, I hope that we can make an impact, meaning we succeed. But it takes a long time to do that, and for a very long period of time, you're completely alone. And I call it the $0 billion market. There's no market. There's no market because no customers are asking you to do it. Nobody knows how to do it. And if nobody knows how to do it, there's no customers asking you to do it. And so it goes around in a circle. And very long time ago, 33 years ago, NVIDIA's first product was considered to be impossible. And it took us many years to realize it. And of course, CUDA was completely impossible. And then deep learning, people thought it was impossible. The list of robotics, self-driving cars, many people still say it's impossible. Even though there's every evidence it does work, there's a lot of people who think that it'll never be completely safe. And so a lot of people, you know, I like problems like that. And the reason why I like it is because if it's impossible to do, and everybody thinks it's impossible, when you fail, you know, it was impossible anyways. And nobody judges you. But so long as we believe it's possible, that's the most important thing.
So you want to, okay, let's give applause. So that's the lesson for our university researchers. Because I asked about the lesson from your story. Yeah, to try to do some impossible thing, but still we believe that the research is possible.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Thank you. Hope that we can copy that. Okay, I'd like to ask about...
You have to believe what you believe.
Okay. Yeah, it's a recursive thing. I have to believe what I believe.
You have to believe what you believe. You have to ask yourself, do you believe this or not?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it's the scientific expression of faith.
Agree.
Right? It's the scientific expression of faith.
Yeah,
it's
agree.
the entrepreneurial expression of faith. Just because other people don't think it's other people think it's impossible, it doesn't matter. It only matters that you believe. And if you believe it's possible, and you've decided to dedicate your life to do it, then who should stop you but yourself, right?
I'll go to the next question. It's about the talent in Indonesia. So, Professor Stella, AI redefines what we need to know. I mean, like, we can do a lot of things using AI. So, what skills do you see as crucial for Indonesia future workforce in both academic and industry setting? And how are institutions evolving to teach this skill? It's
Okay.
about the future workforce.
Yeah. So the skill, part of it I already answered. One that you need to have to be able to have an active learning attitude. That's a very important skill. Okay, you want to ask the questions. You want to drive. Every individual must drive the learning and that goal of exploration yourself. That's a very critical one. The second one is that I think you really need to have system thinking. And system thinking means that you should really try to see every problem, every event that comes your way as what is that connection with the other things that are within your universe or within other people's universe, you know. So when you solve problem, you don't fall into you're solving this problem, but you make other things worse, all right? Or you only think about that, you know, you may change like a regulations and this particular one is solved, but the other things are actually not touched upon. Like, so that system thinking is very important to see the connections and try to compare across many different things that you see in the world. Now, in terms of, you know, how should university evolve, I think this is an interesting question because evolve as if to presume that we're already great where we are and we have to actually, you know, move on to other things, something new, right? But if we look at the history of science, if we look at how truly a system of humans like think, the fundamentals do not change. The fundamentals of exploration. I mean, you just heard what Jensen said he likes to do, to tackle a problem that is impossible to do. That is the essence of exploration. So that needs to be there. And I think maybe for university, we need to actually really to take poise and see right now, have we done that? Have we actually do it ourselves as faculty? Have we taught that to our students, you know? When we write a thesis, when every student writes a thesis, do you ask, like, why are you writing that thesis? Is that thesis truly has a connection with your life, with other people's life? And is that really going to contribute something meaningful rather than just simply fulfilling the requirement of writing a thesis? So I think that's what we really need to do. We need to actually look back to the core about how does the system really think? How does the system really evolve? And in many ways, it's the fundamental core of reasoning that we really need to have in university level. Like, how do you reason? And that reason is, again, actively questioning, actively asking, actively exploring, and think systematically. Think about a system, not just one and one and one. You know, all those many credits, SKS that you learn, they must connect to each other. They must make sense in some levels. Because if they don't make sense to you, if you feel that you're just fulfilling credits and SKS for the sake because you're required to do that, then that's not great. That's not what a university education should do. So I think that's from me.
Thank you very much.
Programming a computer is different than programming an AI. Programming a computer is explicit. Programming an AI, you should be more implicit. And the reason for that is because you want to leave the room for the AI to exceed your expectation. When you write software programs to program a computer, it will never exceed your expectation. It will do exactly what you told it to do. But when you work with an intelligence, when you work with people, oftentimes they can exceed your expectation. The artistry of leadership, the artistry of management even. Leadership is more so than management, but the artistry of management and leadership is to be explicit in explaining the goals and the mission
and the context. But not to be so explicit on the implementation, the execution, such that they cannot exceed your expectation. And so your artistry in talking to an AI is the same.
Yep.
In a lot, you start by explaining what is the context, what is the circumstance. You explain what your goals are. You might even say, I would like you to solve this problem, but explain to me step by step how you solved it. But you're not so explicit about exactly how to solve it. The AI would then give you an answer. Sometimes it's not as good as you expect. And you can tell the AI, is this the best you can do? Literally, every single answer that I get from AI, my first response without even reading it is this the best you can do? Oftentimes, this is how I work with people. They give me their first answer. Without paying much attention to it, I say, is this the best you can do? Surprisingly, it's not. And they go back and they come back with another answer. And this is the artistry of working with AI. We have to teach the current generation of students how to use AI to solve the next generation of problems. Our generation created AI. Now your generation is to use AI to go solve everything else.
I think this is like my last question before the concluding remarks. So we discussing about the future workforce. So how about the existing workforce? Because I agree with the statement that human with AI will win against human without AI, right? And then we go to the organization with AI will win against organization without AI. And a nation with AI will win against a nation without AI. But still, this is the fourth industrial revolution, where there is a shifting of occupation. There are still jobs that can be replaced by AI. So there is a story in US actually. I think you already heard that also, right? It's an influencer. She works as a content writer, right? So then the company replaced her by ChatGPT, for example. So the idea is that how to upskill and reskill the existing workforce to be cope with this AI era. Because I think we need to upskill this existing workforce.
You know, we hear about this upskilling a lot, and I think it's fine. Okay. And yes, I agree that upskilling is important, but I want to be a little bit maybe controversial for today, and I sort of don't really favor this upskilling, because this upskilling assumes that the people have deficiencies and that we got to fix those deficiencies. And I want to encourage, well, I mean, I'm sure there's truth to that, there's truth to like of that, but I want to encourage us to actually pause for a moment and maybe see, maybe it's not upskilling that's actually more important, but it's what I call upsysteming. That is, you actually maybe have to create a system that liberate the potentials that people already have within themselves. You know, I want to give a simple example that if I ask you, who is likely to be a better driver? A Jakartan driver or a Washington, D.C. driver? What do you guys say? Who's the better driver? Jakartan driver for sure, right? Yeah. With all the challenges of the Jakartan streets, for sure.
Because there are no lanes, nothing.
It's more challenging.
Everyone is going in every direction at the same time.
Okay, who's paid more? Washington, D.C. driver, right? Right. So, it's not that the one who's more skillful is the one who paid more. It's quite the opposite. And why? It's because of the system. It's how the system works. It's not necessarily the skill. So yes, I think skill is important. But I think even more important is to think about how to create a system that can really support and liberate everybody's potential, you know. And I have to say, in this, like, thinking about upsysteming, I am very excited. I'm very grateful and I'm very honored to be part of the government of President Prabowo, who really wants to make the system better, who wants to change the system, truly. And this is something very uplifting and very, very moving for myself. And so I want to encourage everybody to, okay, let's think about the skill, but actually beyond that, let's think about how we all can create a system that can really enable everybody. We all have great potentials. You know, when I talk to students, like university students, they all are super excited about doing like amazing things. You've seen so many presentations today about like people are just taking initiatives. When I talk to faculty researchers, you see like amazing people, like Professor Ayu, like who has done so great research, right? But sometimes we have to admit, as she herself said, it's not easy for her to do research here. It's about the system. So how can we create that system to enable us better? So I want to have a appeal for upsysteming and not upskilling. Not only upskilling.
We really have a big hope in you, Professor Stella. We do. We do. Thank you. So I would like to ask the final concluding remark from Professor Stella to close our session.
Okay. I think I want to close by telling you all how smart you really are. You know, we talk about artificial intelligence. Don't forget that each and every one of you is extremely intelligent. I'm not saying this so that you guys like give me a big clap, but it's truly from the research that I do. You know, I do research with babies, like with human babies. And when you do research with that, you know that from very early on, humans are endowed with the most amazing capacity to think, to reason. And it is precisely in the era of AI, we should not forget that. Precisely in the era of AI, we should work together with AI and to use our reasoning to go after, as Jensen said, problems that don't have a solution yet. The thing is, like, I think about AI as able to give you, you know, little pockets of immediate solution. But you, the humans, must reason to think about what is that big question that I want to solve. The first level of Mars analysis, the computational problem. What is the problem that I want to solve? You got to think about that all the time. And you use AI to look at the algorithm, and you use AI also to look at the implementation. So I want to encourage you to look at them upon yourself and think about what is it that you can do given your amazing capacity to reason. Trust me, like, you really have an amazing capacity to reason, and the youngest children already have an amazing capacity to reason, okay? And the second thing I want to say is we also have to think about the system. As I said, upsysteming, okay? And in the system, we got to think about what is the incentive. So we need to put the right incentive from every stakeholders, whether it's the government, whether it's the industry, whether it's the university, academia. You got to work towards the same incentive. If we want the research to actually move forward, give incentives that actually really incentivize that research to happen, all right? So let's not focus on regulations. Let's focus on incentives that really work. That's number one. Number two, you need to think about measurement and not input only. And what I mean by that is that every time you come up with policies, and policies do not only mean policies at the government level. You know, you as parents, you have policies about, do you always like fulfill every time your child like throw a tantrum or cry? That's your policy, okay? So when you think about that thing, you have to think about the measurement, the outcomes. If you say that I put this much input, maybe this much like grant, this much like this kind of new regulation, does that really achieve the outcome that you want? And where is that measurement? How do you measure that the input that you put truly achieves what you want to say? So you need to have a really transparent quantitative measurement. And the third thing is something that I learned from my very good friend, one of the most insightful psychologists of all times, Barry Schwartz, my colleague. And Barry's amazing research asks why we work. Why do we work? Why do you do the things that you do? At some level, you know, you say to earn, to get good salary, right? But I'm sure if I ask Jensen, why do you still do the way you do? You already have so much money, right? Money is not the answer, right? And I'm pretty sure Professor Ayu will also not say that money is her answer. I mean, she will go somewhere else, right? So there's something beyond that. And what my friend Barry Schwartz's research show is that we work because we find meaning in our work. And so every one of us must search for that meaning in everything that you do. Don't just be doing things because they're there. In everything there has to be meaning. And you must strive at every level that you are to give meaning when you are giving somebody else a task or a job to do. It's gotta have meaning. So why we work? I think we work because we want to do meaningful stuff. And if every one of us Indonesian think like that, and with the resources, with the governance that we have right now, I'm pretty sure we're going to be a great nation moving forward.
Yes. Actually, we are run out of time, but do you have any concluding remarks?
300 years ago, if someone would have told you you can run 10 times faster than a horse, no one would believe it, that you could be superhuman. Don't worry about AI becoming superhuman. Use AI so that you become superhuman.
Thank you very much.